There's a moment, a fraction of a second, when someone tells you a lie, and in that instant, their body betrays them before their words even finish leaving their mouth. Most people miss it completely. They're too focused on what's being said, on the story, on the explanation. But Sherlock Holmes knew better. He understood that the human body is incapable of lying, even when the mind desperately wants to. Every muscle twitch, every eye movement, every slight shift in posture is a confession written in a language most people never learn to read. And that's the difference between being fooled and being untouchable. Because once you know what to look for, lies become as obvious as someone screaming the truth while pretending to whisper. The average person believes that liars avoid eye contact. They've been told this their whole lives. Look someone in the eye, that's honesty. But here's what Sherlock would tell you, and it's going to shatter everything you thought you knew. Skilled liars, the dangerous ones, they hold eye contact too long. They've read the same books you have. They know the stereotype, so they overcompensate. They lock eyes with you, unblinking, rigid, like they're trying to prove something. And that's the tell. Because natural eye contact, real eye contact, it fluctuates. It breaks. It reconnects. It flows with the rhythm of genuine conversation. But a liar's stare, it feels forced, mechanical, like they're performing honesty rather than living it. Watch for the person who doesn't blink enough. Watch for the gaze that feels like it's challenging you rather than connecting with you. That's not confidence. That's calculation. And calculation always leaves fingerprints. Before we go deeper into the mind of deception, if you want to master the art of reading people like Sherlock Holmes and never be fooled again, hit that subscribe button right now. This channel breaks down psychology, body language, and power dynamics that most people will never understand. Don't just watch, become someone who sees what others miss. Subscribe, and let's continue. Now, let's talk about micro-expressions. These are the flashes of truth that appear on someone's face for less than half a second before they can control them. Sherlock Holmes was a master at catching these because he understood something fundamental. The conscious mind can lie, but the subconscious reacts faster than conscious control. When someone hears a question they weren't prepared for, or when they're about to deliver a rehearsed lie, their face flickers. It might be a quick downturn of the mouth, a flash of fear in the eyes, a brief tightening of the jaw. Most people miss it because they're waiting for the answer, not watching the face. But if you train yourself to observe the moment before someone speaks, you'll see the truth they're trying to hide. A genuine smile engages the entire face. The eyes crinkle, the cheeks rise naturally, the expression spreads organically. A fake smile, the kind liars use to seem trustworthy, it only activates the mouth. The eyes stay dead. The forehead doesn't move. It's a mask, not an emotion. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Every fake smile becomes a neon sign flashing dishonesty. Here's something most people don't know. Liars touch their face more, not in obvious ways, but in small, unconscious gestures. They touch their nose, rub their eye, scratch their neck, cover their mouth. Why? Because lying creates psychological discomfort. It triggers a stress response, and that stress manifests physically. The body tries to self-soothe, tries to create a barrier between the lie and the person hearing it. When someone is telling you the truth, their hands are usually open, relaxed, used for natural gestures that emphasize their words. But when someone is lying, their hands become busy, restless, fidgety. They're trying to discharge nervous energy. Watch the hands. If someone keeps touching their face while explaining something, especially around the mouth and nose, your subconscious is screaming at you to pay attention. That's not just nervousness, that's concealment. And Sherlock would tell you this: the body doesn't lie even when the person desperately wants it to. Vocal patterns are where amateur liars get destroyed. Because while they might control their words, they rarely control their voice. Listen for changes in pitch. When someone is lying, their voice often goes higher. It's subtle, but it's there. The vocal cords tighten under stress. The lie creates tension, and that tension affects the sound. Also, listen for pace. Liars often speak faster when delivering the lie itself, rushing through the deceptive part as if speed will make it more believable. But then, they slow down dramatically when adding unnecessary details, because they're trying to convince you, trying to build credibility around the lie. Truthful people maintain a relatively consistent pace. They don't need to rush or embellish. They simply tell you what happened. Another vocal tell is the defensive tone. When someone is lying and they sense you might be doubting them, they get defensive before you even challenge them. Why would I lie about that? I'm telling you the truth. I swear on my life. These aren't just emphasis. They're overcompensation. The truth doesn't need to be sworn upon. It simply exists. And when someone starts volunteering oaths and promises without being asked, that's a signal. They're trying to convince themselves as much as they're trying to convince you. Body orientation is massive, and most people completely miss this. When someone is telling you the truth, their body naturally faces you. Their torso, their feet, their shoulders, everything aligns toward you because they're engaged. They're open. They're in the conversation. But when someone is lying, their body starts to turn away. It's subtle. Maybe their feet angle toward the door. Maybe their shoulders rotate slightly to the side. Maybe they lean back instead of forward. This is the body's subconscious attempt to distance itself from the lie. The mind might be committed to the deception, but the body wants out. It wants to escape the discomfort. Sherlock Holmes would watch not just the face, but the full physical presence. He'd notice if someone's feet were pointing away during a critical part of the story. He'd see the torso rotation. He'd catch the lean back when the conversation got specific. Because these aren't conscious choices. They're automatic responses to psychological stress, and they're more reliable than words could ever be. Now let's get surgical. Eye direction. This is where it gets fascinating. When people recall actual memories, their eyes move in specific patterns. Generally, when someone is remembering something visual they actually saw, their eyes move up and to the left for right-handed people, up and to the right for left-handed people. When they're constructing something, when they're inventing a story, the eyes move the opposite direction. They're accessing the creative part of the brain rather than the memory storage part. But here's the advanced move. Don't just watch for the direction. Watch for the pause. When someone is telling the truth, they access the memory and speak fluidly. When someone is lying, there's often a micro-pause before the fabricated detail. They have to construct it, and construction takes processing time. It's a fraction of a second, but it's there. The confident liar has rehearsed the main story, but when you ask an unexpected question, when you push for a detail they didn't prepare, that's when you see the eyes shift into construction mode. That's when the pause happens. That's when the fabrication becomes visible. And once you see it, you have them. Hand gestures tell you everything. People who are telling the truth use illustrative gestures that match their words. If they're talking about something big, their hands spread wide. If they're describing a sequence, their hands move in a flowing pattern. The gestures are synchronized with the narrative. But liars, their gestures are off. They're either too rigid, barely moving, holding their hands close to their body to avoid giving anything away. Or they're overacting, gesturing wildly to seem more convincing, but the gestures don't actually match what they're saying. It's performance rather than natural expression. Sherlock would also watch for what's called the hand shrug. This is when someone says something definitive, something they're claiming is absolute truth, but their hands make a small, barely perceptible shrugging motion. It's the body contradicting the words. The mouth says I'm certain, but the hands say I'm not really sure. This happens because the subconscious knows it's lying, and it leaks through in these micro gestures. Train yourself to watch the hands during key statements. If the hands don't support the words are likely false. Baseline behavior is critical. You can't spot a liar unless you know how they act when they're telling the truth. This is why Sherlock Holmes was so effective. He observed people in neutral states first. He'd watch how they naturally moved, spoke, gestured when there was no pressure, no reason to lie. Then when the critical moment came, when the question was asked, he'd compare. Any deviation from baseline was a red flag. If someone normally makes steady eye contact but suddenly looks away during one specific answer, that's not random. If someone usually speaks at a measured pace but rushes through one particular explanation, that's significant. If someone who typically uses open hand gestures suddenly crosses their arms or hides their hands, you've found the lie. This is why interrogators spend time building rapport before asking hard questions. They're establishing baseline. They're learning the person's normal patterns so they can spot the abnormal. You need to do the same. Don't just jump to reading someone. Observe them first. Learn their patterns. Then when the deviation comes, you'll see it instantly. Here's one that destroys liars every time. Inconsistency in detail. When someone tells a true story, the details remain consistent across multiple tellings. They might add new details as they remember more, but the core facts don't change. When someone is lying, the details shift. Not drastically, because they're trying to maintain the lie. But small things change. In one version, they were wearing a blue shirt. In the next telling, it's green. First, they said they arrived at 8. Later, it's 7:30. These aren't memory errors. These are construction errors. The brain can't maintain a false narrative with perfect consistency because it's not pulling from actual memory. It's generating fiction, and fiction is unstable. Sherlock Holmes would ask someone to tell the same story twice, hours apart. He'd listen not for the big picture, but for the small details. And when those details shifted, he knew he was being lied to. You can do this too. If something feels off, if you suspect deception, ask them to explain it again later. Don't make it obvious. Just bring it up naturally. And then compare. The liar will slip. They always do. Defensive barriers are huge. When someone is lying, they unconsciously create physical barriers between themselves and you. They might cross their arms. They might place an object like a cup, a phone, a folder between you and them. They might even step back, increasing the physical distance. This is the body trying to protect itself from being exposed. It's creating a shield. Truthful people stay open. Their body language is relaxed, accessible, unguarded. But liars, they fortify. They build walls. And these walls aren't just psychological, they're physical. Watch for the person who suddenly picks up their coffee cup and holds it in front of their chest while answering your question. Watch for the crossed arms that appear mid-conversation. Watch for the step backward or the lean away. These aren't casual movements. They're defensive reactions to the internal stress of lying. And the more stressed they are, the more obvious the barriers become. Timing is everything. There's a delay between a question and a lie. It's brief, sometimes less than a second, but it's there. Because the liar has to process the question, decide how to respond, construct the false answer, and then deliver it. Truth doesn't require that process. When someone is telling the truth, the answer comes naturally, fluidly, without noticeable pause. But when someone is lying, you'll see the micro delay. It's the brain working overtime. You can exploit this. Ask questions rapidly, without giving them time to prepare. Don't let them control the pace of the conversation. When you rapid-fire questions, liars start to crack. They can't keep up. They can't maintain the constructed narrative under pressure. And that's when the mistakes happen. That's when the body language betrays them completely. The pauses get longer. The fidgeting increases. The eye movements become erratic. They're drowning, and you're just watching them sink. Overcompensation is the signature of deception. Liars try too hard. They add too many details. They emphasize too much. They repeat themselves unnecessarily. Why? Because they're afraid you won't believe them. So they pile on. They think more information equals more credibility. But the opposite is true. When someone is telling the truth, they give you what you need and nothing more. They're not performing. They're not selling. They're just stating facts. But liars, they turn it into a production. They tell you what they were wearing, what the weather was like, what song was playing on the radio, details that have nothing to do with the core question, but are meant to create an atmosphere of authenticity. Sherlock would recognize this immediately. He'd let them talk. He'd let them overplay their hand. Because the more they said, the more material he had to dismantle. And when he found the one detail that didn't fit, the whole story collapsed. So when someone gives you way more information than you asked for, that's not helpfulness. That's desperation, and desperation is the scent of a lie. Emotional incongruence is a massive tell. When someone describes a situation, their emotional expression should match the content. If they're telling you about something sad, their face should show sadness. If they're describing something exciting, you should see that excitement in their eyes, their gestures, their energy. But liars often get this wrong. They might describe a traumatic event with a slight smile. They might talk about something wonderful with a flat, emotionless tone. This is because they're not actually accessing real emotion. They're performing what they think the emotion should look like, and the performance is always slightly off. It's like watching a bad actor. The words say one thing, but the face says nothing, or worse, says something completely different. Sherlock Holmes was a genius at spotting emotional incongruence. He'd watch someone claim to be devastated while their body language showed relief. He'd see someone profess joy while their face remained tight and stressed. The body tells the emotional truth. The words just carry the lie. And when those two things don't align, you found your answer. Now, let's talk about the freeze response. When most people think of stress, they think fight or flight. But there's a third response that liars exhibit constantly: freeze. When caught in a lie or when asked a question they didn't expect, liars sometimes go completely still. Not calm stillness, frozen stillness. It's like their brain short circuits and the body just stops. They stop moving, stop gesturing, sometimes even seem to stop breathing for a moment. This is the nervous system overwhelming the person. They're locked between wanting to flee and needing to maintain the deception. So they freeze. And it's incredibly obvious once you know to look for it. Compare this to how people act when they're telling the truth. They stay animated, relaxed, natural. Their body continues to move in normal patterns. But the frozen liar looks like someone hit pause. Their eyes might still be on you, but everything else has locked down. It's the body's way of trying to become invisible, trying not to give anything away. But ironically, the freeze itself gives everything away. Watch the mouth, not just what comes out of it, but how it moves. When someone is about to lie, they often press their lips together tightly, even just for a moment. It's a self-comfort gesture, a way of literally holding back the truth. You'll also see lip biting, lip licking, or pursed lips. These are all signs of internal stress and discomfort. The mouth knows it's about to betray the person's integrity, and it reacts. Another mouth tell is the fake smile we talked about earlier, but let's go deeper. When someone gives you a fake smile while lying, watch how quickly it appears and disappears. Real smiles build gradually and fade gradually. Fake smiles snap on and snap off like a light switch. It's there, then it's gone. No transition, no natural fade. That's because it's not connected to real emotion. It's a tool being deployed and then immediately retracted. Sherlock would watch the mouth constantly. He knew that the muscles around the mouth were some of the hardest to control under stress, and stress always reveals itself there. Breathing patterns change dramatically when someone lies. The stress of deception triggers the sympathetic nervous system. Heart rate increases. Breathing becomes shallow and faster. You can see this in the chest and shoulders. If someone's breathing suddenly becomes visible, if their shoulders start rising and falling more noticeably, if they seem to be taking quick, shallow breaths, they're under stress. And if that stress coincides with a specific topic or question, you know where the lie lives. Conversely, some liars try to control this by holding their breath or taking one deep breath before answering. They're trying to calm themselves, trying to suppress the physiological response. But that deep breath, that pause to inhale, that's also a tell. It's preparation. It's the body gearing up for the effort of deception. Truth doesn't require preparation. Truth just flows. So whether the breathing speeds up or whether they're clearly trying to control it, either way, you're watching a body betray a lie. Feet never lie. This is one of Sherlock's favorite observations. While people focus on controlling their face and hands, they almost never think about their feet, and the feet are brutally honest. When someone is uncomfortable, when they're lying, when they want to leave the situation, their feet point toward the exit. Always. You could be facing them, having a conversation, and their torso might even be angled toward you, but if their feet are pointed at the door, they're mentally checking out. They're planning their escape. Also, watch for foot movement. Tapping, bouncing, shifting weight from foot to foot, these are all anxiety indicators. The body is trying to discharge nervous energy, and it does so through the feet. Liars will often lock their ankles, wrapping one foot around the other, almost like they're physically trying to anchor themselves. It's a self-restraint gesture. The body wants to run, but they're forcing it to stay. So the feet lock up. Next time you're in a conversation where you suspect deception, don't stare at their face. Look down. Watch the feet. They'll tell you everything their mouth is trying to hide. Throat clearing and swallowing are autonomic responses to stress. When someone lies, their mouth gets dry. It's a physiological reaction to the fight or flight response kicking in, so they swallow more frequently, or they clear their throat before answering. Listen for this. If someone suddenly needs to clear their throat before responding to a specific question, that question hit a nerve. If they keep swallowing during their explanation, their body is reacting to the stress of lying. These aren't conscious actions. They can't control them. The dry mouth happens automatically. The need to swallow happens automatically. And every time they do it, they're confirming that their body is under stress. And stress during a conversation usually means deception. Sherlock wouldn't just watch, he'd listen. He'd hear the throat clear, the hard swallow, the slight cough, and he'd know. He'd know that whatever was just said or was about to be said wasn't true. Here's an advanced technique. Watch what happens after they finish lying. There's often a moment of relief. The hard part is over. They got through it. And in that moment, their body relaxes slightly. Maybe they exhale. Maybe their shoulders drop. Maybe they shift their posture. It's subtle, but it's there. It's the release of tension. And that release tells you that what just happened was difficult, was stressful, was a performance. When someone tells the truth, there's no tension to release. The conversation just flows naturally. There's no hard part to get through. But liars experience a clear before, during, and after. Before the lie, they're preparing, tense, anxious. During the lie, they're rigidly controlled, focused, performing. After the lie, they relax, exhale, decompress. If you see this pattern, you've just watched someone lie to you. And now you know exactly which part of the conversation was false, because the body marked it for you with tension and release. The final and most powerful tell is intuition backed by observation. Sherlock Holmes wasn't just using logic, he was using pattern recognition that had become instinctive. When you train yourself to observe these signals, consciously at first, they eventually become automatic. You'll start to feel when something is off. You'll sense the lie before you can even articulate why. That's not magic. That's your brain processing microsignals faster than your conscious mind can track them. Trust that feeling. When someone's words say one thing, but every cell in your body is screaming that something is wrong, you're picking up on the constellation of tells we've discussed. The eye movement, the hand gesture, the vocal pitch, the body orientation, all of it combines into a gut feeling. And that gut feeling is almost always right. But you have to train it. You have to practice observation. You have to watch people, study them, compare their behaviors, and over time, you'll become like Sherlock. You'll spot the lie in 3 seconds, not because you're analyzing every detail consciously, but because your trained mind recognizes the pattern instantly. Most people walk through life being lied to constantly and never knowing it. They take words at face value. They trust tone. They believe the performance. But now you're different. Now you know what to look for. You know that the body cannot lie even when the mouth does. You know that stress reveals itself in 1,000 tiny ways. You know that observation beats trust every single time. And armed with this knowledge, you become nearly impossible to deceive. Because while they're focused on what they're saying, you're watching everything they're not saying. You're reading the language beneath the language. You're seeing the truth they're trying to hide. That's the power Sherlock Holmes wielded. Not superhuman intelligence, just superhuman awareness. And now you have the tools to develop that same awareness. The question is, will you use them? Will you start observing instead of just listening? Will you watch the hands, the feet, the eyes, the breath? Will you compare baseline to deviation? Will you trust what the body is telling you over what the mouth is claiming? Because the people who master this, they operate on a different level. They're never blindsided. They're never manipulated. They see through deception like glass. And in a world where everyone is performing, where everyone has an agenda, where truth is rare and lies are common, being able to spot deception in 3 seconds isn't just a skill. It's a superpower. It's the difference between being a player in the game and being played. So take these 15 signals, study them, practice them. Watch people in conversations, in meetings, in casual interactions. Notice the patterns. Train your eye, sharpen your awareness. And soon, very soon, you'll walk into any room and know within seconds who's being real and who's performing. You'll hear the lie before they finish speaking it. You'll see the deception in the micro-expression that flashes across their face. You'll catch the tell in the hand that touches the nose, the foot that points to the door, the breath that quickens before the false answer. And when you can do that, when you've mastered the art of reading people at this level, you become untouchable. Because knowledge is power. But the knowledge of when someone is lying to you, that's not just power. That's armor. That's the ability to navigate a world full of deception without ever being its victim. And that's exactly what Sherlock Holmes understood. That's why he was always 3 steps ahead. Not because he knew more facts, but because he knew more truth. And truth, real truth, isn't found in words. It's written in the body language that people can't control. It's hidden in the signals they don't even know they're sending. And now you know how to read them. Now you have the map. The only question left is how far you're willing to go with it. Because once you start seeing lies everywhere, you can't unsee them. Once you've trained your eye to catch deception, you'll spot it constantly. In your relationships, in your workplace, in casual conversation. And that knowledge changes you. It makes you harder to fool, but also harder to trust. Because when you know how easy it is to lie, you question everyone. And maybe that's the price of awareness. Maybe that's what Sherlock paid. But maybe it's also freedom. Freedom from being manipulated. Freedom from being deceived. Freedom from living in other people's lies. So choose. Choose to develop this skill and step into a reality where you see what others miss. Or choose to remain comfortable in the illusion that people mean what they say. Both paths are valid, but only one path gives you power. Only one path makes you dangerous to deceivers. Only one path turns you into someone who can look another person in the eye and know within 3 seconds whether they're telling the truth or feeding you a carefully constructed lie. And if you've made it this far, if you've read this entire breakdown, then you've already chosen. You're already on the path. Now it's just about walking it, about practicing, about observing, about becoming the person who never gets fooled again. Welcome to the other side. Welcome to seeing the world as Sherlock Holmes saw it, where every interaction is a puzzle, where every conversation contains clues, and where the truth is always visible if you just know where to look.